I normally only lurk here, but I wanted to create a thread to discuss the weird things that I saw when I was in eastern Siberia and see if anyone has similar stories. I used to work for a rather successful oil company. I signed an NDA, so I'm not going to say which one, and was sent on a 14-month trip to eastern Siberia as part of a team to search several regions for unknown oil basins. The company itself specialized in shale, but our board of directors decided they wanted the company to diversify. The company was not able to afford offshore exploratory drilling, so this was all on land, seismic surveys, and 2 exploratory wells. We were trekking through extremely remote areas of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R Republic, Amur Oblast, and the Kamchatka Peninsula. Our team was mostly composed of Americans from the Midwest. I'm from Minnesota originally. We also had a translator named Gorin. He spoke Russian but wasn't Russian. We found him in St. Louis, Missouri, and, apparently, he was originally from Yugoslavia. I guess what I want to say is that Siberia is one of the strangest and most haunting places you will ever visit. The inhabited buildings look like pick attached. There are abandoned brick commie block constructions everywhere. Most of the towns are half abandoned because they were populated by people forced to live there. The moment the USSR crashed, everyone went back to European Russia. It is larger than Australia and there's barely anyone living there. It's one of the most wild and unexplored regions of the world. There are literally abandoned prison camps in the middle of nowhere. I have never been somewhere that feels as paranormal and bone-chillingly haunted as one of them that we found, 200 kilometers west of Magadan. It's very rare, but there is some sort of bear out there much bigger and more aggressive than a grizzly. Its back legs are shorter than its front ones, giving it a slope, and the back legs also have long hair on them, making them look baggy. So, first things first, the company put together our team. My job was to create the itinerary, organize the food, ensure that everyone else arrived where they were supposed to, etc. Basically all the logistics and translating oil junkie garble into info the board of directors would understand. Gorin, the translator. When he wasn't working, he was playing chess or listening to Serb rap songs. Matt, not his real name, he was our tech specialist / engineer / machinist extraordinaire. Daryl and Jackson. Basically they did whatever Matt told them to. They were basically your run-of-the-mill oil boom types. When we drilled the exploratory wells, we just hired local labor because it was super cheap. We also hired locals to get us to the sites deep in the woods that we wanted to survey. Getting to the Far East. I picked up Daryl and Jackson in Minot and then started the 8+ hour drive to the Minneapolis airport. It was a beautifully sunny day in the middle of July. Eventually we made our way to the MSP airport, where we met Matt. He was a quiet guy, in his 50s. We then flew to Seattle and wandered around the airport looking for Gorin, who was listening to music inside a bar. I'd already chatted with him via Skype. I had picked him as our translator. I made sure everyone was acquainted, texted my boss, and then we flew to Vladivostok via South Korea. I was exhausted and tried to sleep as much as possible on the flight. We then flew to Magadan. I ordered burgers to go at this greasy airport diner named Burger Club, and then we took separate cabs to our hotel. We stayed there for the night, and the next morning we met our guide who would organize transport to the Kamchatka Peninsula. We arrived and drove rented SUVs, called Ladanivas. I want you to picture endless and almost impenetrable large birch and pine trees. That is what we were surrounded by. Now here's where things get weird. We had very strange experiences with both wildlife, and while using a gulag as a base, bears couldn't get in it. The prison camp had held many Germans, based off of the scribblings, and there was a lot of weird stuff going on. When we were in northern Kamchatka, Matt was busily using the survey equipment with Jackson. Daryl helped too with that, while Gorin and I basically acted as the bear detection squad. There are a lot of bears in Kamchatka. It's like those Nat Geo videos of Alaska. Anyways, we had this one brown bear that kept getting close to us. She looked young and skittish. she kept swinging her head back and forth in that agitated way that bears do. We tried using foghorns to scare her off, but she wouldn't budge, so our local guide fires his gun to spook her. She darted towards a pine thicket, and suddenly we saw this massive bear chasing her. It was muscly, fast, and powerful. Its coat was a very dark grayish brown, its front legs were longer than its hind ones, and it kind of ran like a hyena, if that makes any sense. I'd never seen anything like it. It tore apart the smaller bear and started eating her about 1,000 feet away from us. I had Corin and Daryl keep their guns aimed at the bear. The guide told us that it was a type the locals are aware of and that they're very rare. They occasionally kill smaller bears. I later learned a skin from one of these was obtained many years ago by a Swedish biologist named Bergman, but there doesn't seem to be any interest in tracking these animals down. After about 10 more minutes, Matt finished the survey and we loaded our equipment into the off-road truck and left. The giant bear was still lounging near its kill. One day, when we returned to our KRAZ-214, giant Soviet-era vehicle, pick attached, I noticed a pile of human-looking feces. At night we could hear someone moving around and we felt like people were watching us. I assumed that we were dealing with old believers, basically crazy Russian Amish people who live in the middle of nowhere, so I had Corin tell them to knock it off in Russian. Someone shouted back to him and he said that they said this was their land and we needed to leave. We also once stumbled across a house that our guide said was used by an old believer and he had us turn around. They live like the Amish except they'll cut you up in a heartbeat. We packed our things and went back to base camp to plot our next trip. By now our local contacts had an exploratory well drilled in Kamchatka and we were focusing on a new area west of Magadan. Okay, now for by far the creepiest experience when we were in Siberia. As we were exploring the area west of Magadan, we found an abandoned prison camp. It had tall wooden towers, some concrete and steel buildings that were still functional, and a fence that was falling apart. We used it as a camp because bears couldn't get in and it seemed safer. It was also a lot nicer to not have to set up tents and to have tables to use. I am not someone who is overly interested in ghosts, but I 100% believe that place was haunted by some very frustrated spirits. There were German phrases scribbled here and there under boards whatnot, so I'm assuming it was one of the camps the Soviets built in the 40s to house German POWs and SS officers captured after the war. Little known fact, but a lot of Germans got worked to death in Siberia after that war ended. Several of us heard boots marching during the night. Maybe that was some sort of animal, but it sounded human, knocking noises, banging noises, and I had a weird dream where I was talking to a woman with black eyes and floating hair. It was genuinely disturbing. Matt, not superstitious, said he had a nightmare where he was choked by something. We stayed there for a few days, and since Daryl, Corin, and I didn't really have much to do while Matt and Jackson did their surveys, we built a Ouija board using a notepad, a few pens to draw in the letters, and a wooden table in the camp. We basically decided to talk to whoever was there. I don't think they were messing with me because it felt real and I was the only German speaker there. The board repetitively spelled SSSD, aka SD, a division of the SS, and Muller. The board also spelled several German phrases including ganz ruhig, all quiet, and Wiederkommen, come again. One more thing that was very strange about the camp, I felt a pair of small cold hands push me awake and there was no one there. The entire side of the room where that happened was cold. I have no idea what was happening, but it was very strange. Corin also claimed to feel something push him, and seeing as he was the only Slav there, maybe the spirits disliked him. IDK. What types of phrases did you find written? Everything from personal names such as Ich heiss Heinrich, my name is Heinrich, to place names someone had etched. Neulinz, Linz is a city in Austria. I did not see any Cyrillic, Russian, letters etched anywhere, so I am guessing that no Russian political prisoners were sent to that site. As far as I know, that would be normal because there were literally thousands of Gulag camps in the 1950s and many camps were mono-ethnic, One might hold Russian political dissidents, another camp would have Ukrainians, the next would be full of Germans, etc. Larger prison camps did not follow this rule. Now I kinda wanna go there to see the places where my ancestors were sadistically tortured to death. Also, your story about the hyena bear sounds like it's BS. Got anything to back up your claim? The Bergman's bear, Ursus arctos piscator, is an alleged and probably extinct subspecies of the brown bear that lived in the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. The bear was identified and named by Swedish zoologist Sten Bergman in 1920. Bergman determined that the bear was a separate subspecies after examining a hide, which had fur very different from other local bears, and series of footprints, measuring 14.5 times 10 inches, which he judged to be much larger than other bears on Kamchatka. The Kamchatka brown bear is already bigger than most bear species. Interest in the bear was revitalized in the 1960s. Hunter Rodion Sivabolov reported claims by Kamchatka natives of an unusually large bear they called either the Irkoium, roughly meaning trousers pulled down due to the appearance of the bear's hind legs, or the god bear due to its large size. Based on Sivabolov's description, biologist N.K. Vereshchagin suggested that the god bear might be a relict Arctidocimus, a massive extinct bear. I find it fascinating that people create threads saying vampires are real and get hundreds of positive responses, but someone says, hey, there's a giant bear in Russia in an area where no one lives, and you think it sounds like SS. It's literally more realistic than 99% of what gets posted on this board.